We seem to be living through a period where Americans and many millions of Americans want to forget. They want to forget our past. They want to forget that our political and legal system is as marked by a history of cruelty and brutality and inhumanity as it is fairness or justice or decency. They want to forget, and they want to erase from our textbooks and our schools the significance of the experiences of Black Americans, whose long and ongoing encounter with the American political system tells a story of authoritarianism and unfreedom that challenges deeply held ideas about what this country is. It tells a story of forms of hierarchy that have placed entire classes of citizens outside the protection of law. I have been thinking a lot about this desire to forget recently, in part because of the world around us, but in part for personal reasons. A couple years ago, my grandfather passed away. He was 80 years old. He was born in Ware County, Georgia in 1939, not too far from the Okefenokee Swamp, if you know the area, and he came to adulthood under Jim Crow. He served briefly in the U.S. Army, and then left the service to work as a railroad technician in Waycross, Georgia. I had always told myself that I would sit down and talk to my grandfather about his childhood and his upbringing, talk to him about what it was like to live under Jim Crow at a time when it was far from obvious that that regime would fall anytime soon. I lost the opportunity to do so, unfortunately, and that's a real regret I think I'll have for the rest of my life. But the reason I mention this is because our awardee for the Hillman Prize for Book Journalism, Margaret Burnham for By Hands Now Known, Jim Crow's Legal Executioners, has, in my view, done something truly remarkable, something that has provided me, at least, with a little bit of what I'd hoped to get from talking to my grandfather. With the assistance of researchers and using newspaper accounts and court testimony and rulings and coroner's reports and interviews with surviving witnesses, just a comprehensive accumulation of information, Burnham has produced a breathtaking and powerfully comprehensive investigation of Jim Crow-era violence and, most importantly, the legal apparatus that sustained it in all of its forms. Now, typically, when we're talking about Jim Crow-era violence in common parlance, we're thinking about lynchings. That's what people have in their head. But this is a book about the more quotidian violence of Jim Crow. It's about the beatings, the assaults, the random killings that went unpunished if they were even noted or noticed by authorities. It is a book about the way that state and local authorities either excused, condoned, or facilitated violence against Black Americans, both formally and informally reinforcing their subordinate status in the community. It is a book about the way the federal government consistently failed to act, failed to do justice by the victims, and failed to protect the civil and constitutional rights of millions of Americans. And it is a book of truly harrowing stories of bus drivers deputized to assault Black citizens in the streets, of Black soldiers attacked and terrorized by fellow members of the greatest generation when they wanted nothing more than to serve their country. Burnham shows and examines why this violence went unpunished. She shows how the entire American political order sanctioned a world in which some citizens, either under color of law or with its implicit sanction, were granted the right to intimidate and brutalize others. She shows how the Jim Crow legal system was a pathway in which the norms and ideologies produced by slavery made their way into the American criminal legal system, and how they continue to fester to this day, shaping our lives in the process. But Burnham also shows the resistance to this system in the 1940s and the 1950s, a resistance often overshadowed by the story of the heyday of the civil rights movement with which many of us are familiar. It's a resistance defined by men and women who could not know the future, but who fought for a better one all the same. With By Hands Now Known, it's not just that Burnham shows why we cannot forget, she shows why we must not forget. These stories of fear and violence are very much reminders of what this country is capable of, but these stories of courage and resistance are reminders of what we are capable of. With that said, it is my deep pleasure to present the Hillman Prize for Book Journalism to Margaret Burnham for By Hands Now Known.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jamelle. Thank you so much to the Sidney Hillman Foundation. Thank you to the judges. Thank you for our labor leaders and the leaders of our progressive movement who are here. Thank you so much to the journalists, the courageous journalists. I am so proud to be in your company tonight. As David Cole said, my mom would think I deserve to be here. And my father, who was born in Harlem Hospital and who died in Harlem Hospital, would think, oh, wow, she's back on 42nd Street in New York City. He would be so very thrilled. I'm thrilled as well and honored by the presence of my editor, John Glussman, without whom, you know how that sentence ends, I would not be here. And so grateful as well that my husband, Max Stern, has come from Boston to join me. You know, you throw a book out in the world, and you don't really know where it's going to land. You throw it out there with your highest hopes and your vision for where it will find its readers. You hope it will end up on someone's night table, underneath the crossword puzzle, and underneath a whole lot of more pleasant reading than this book, but that it will be there. You hope that it will end up in some college student's book bag, backpack, or in the college library. You hope it will end up in a prison library. You hope it will end up on a book list for a book club in some small town in Mississippi. And my book, I am thankful and grateful to say, has found its audience in all those places. I also, good people, I also aspired that when I sent this book out in the world, some of the stories that I told would find a rejoinder, that there would be revelations that we in our work, our students at Northeastern University School of Law, had not yet unearthed. And I particularly had that hope for the case that I opened the book with. It's the case of Ollie Hunter. The year is 1944, and the town is Donaldsonville, Georgia. Ollie Hunter was 55 years old when she died in May of 1944. She had walked into a Main Street store in the town where she and all of her ancestors had grown up. And she picked up a can of oil. And so incensed, for some reason yet unknown, the store owner, a young white man in his 20s, that he followed her out of the Main Street store and beat her to death with an axe. There, Ollie Hunter's story lay until our students uncovered a letter in the Library of Congress, written to the NAACP by a Donaldsonville resident, who recounted what happened to Ollie Hunter and who added, Donaldsonville is a small, isolated town. Please help. The NAACP was not able. It was 70 years later, when we picked up her case, that we restored her story to the long stream of American history. And I have heard, as I said, letters, emails, calls from readers all over this country, and I'm grateful for that. I have yet to hear from anyone in Donaldsonville, Georgia, and so our work is not yet done. There is another case that I'd like to share with you that I relate in my book, which does not have the same gaping hole in it. And it's that of Booker Spicely, a name I'm sure many of you, all of you well-versed in our movement history, our progressive history, our American history, probably have not yet heard. Booker Spicely, born in Virginia, raised in Philadelphia, and sent to join the U.S. Army in North Carolina, was stationed at Camp Butner near Durham. On the fateful day in July of 1944, in uniform, he traveled from Durham back to his base. It was a Saturday night. He'd been out on the town. A bus driver, following the white soldier, also dressed in the U.S. Army uniform, got on the bus, said to Spicely, "Move back," and Spicely, daring as he was, responded, "We are wearing the same uniform. Why must I get up?" For that, dear friends, Booker Spicely, remember his name, as he left the bus, was shot to death in Durham, North Carolina, by the bus driver, who got back on the bus and finished his route, leaving Spicely to die on the curb. We know about Rosa Parks. There are dozens of Booker Spiceleys we do not yet know about. This story has a more conclusive and hopeful ending than that of Ollie Hunter, because North Carolinians have picked up the Booker Spicely story and integrated it into their syllabuses and created markers and taken the story to their churches, and in all other manners of remembrance have tried to restore Booker Spicely's memory, his courage, and what he stands for to the stream of American history. Dear friends, this work should have been done many years ago. They say it's never too late, but for many of the families that we met, it may well be too late. The work continues. The Booker Spicely story, what they've been able to do in Durham, North Carolina, what must yet be done for Ollie Hunter and all the others. That is a story that I leave all of you with today. I hope you'll enjoy my book, and I am so, so honored, so thrilled to be here in my hometown receiving this award. Thank you so much.